Hi folks, welcome to the weekend. I hope you've had a great reading week. And on that topic, what have I been reading? I read Upgrade by Blake Crouch, the author, of course, of Dark Matter. And this is much like Dark Matter, a page-turner, a thriller. Well, we're in the nearish future, I think I don't remember when exactly, in the aftermath of a genetic accident which has caused the death of hundreds of millions. A mistake of hubris by Dr. Ramsey, who's the mother of the main character, Logan Ramsey, who did jail time for being her lab assistant. But the mother topped herself driving off a cliff, although her body was never found. The protagonist now works for the GPA, I think is the three-letter acronym, an enforcement agency that deals with genetic crimes, of which there are now many, most forms of genetic manipulation or research having been outlawed after the big disaster. So Logan is called in to investigate a crime and is lured into a dangerous situation and caught in a bomb blast. But it's not any old bomb, and he wakes to find himself in hospital, not badly wounded. Over the following days and weeks, he starts to feel ill, but also better. He can see better, he can hear better, think better. He feels stronger and faster. He feels upgraded. How, and more importantly, why, is the central mystery of the book. The authorities become interested in his new capabilities and he has to escape, aided by a mystery benefactor that may or may not have his best interests at heart. There's a lot of chasing around the country, playing hide and seek with various parties, honing his upgraded capabilities so that he can eventually win the day. I suppose you could say that it's hard science fiction in that there's a lot of gobbledygook about gene combinations that have been upgraded, which at least makes it seem, if not plausible, then extrapolated from a plausible base. It's kind of a silly book, but fun while you're in it. I found the same really with Dark Matter, to be honest. I would describe it as something like a fun beach read, not engaging too much of your brain, fun while it lasts, but disposable, forgettable. I think I found this in a charity shop, and actually I know I did because it's still got the price tag on it, and I think it can go back there, and that's fine. It was, like I say, I had fun while I was there, but it's not a keeper, it's not a classic by any means. Next I read Saturn Run by Sandford, who's a thriller writer as well actually, and somebody called Ctein, or I don't know how I should pronounce that, but Ctein. In this book, something has been spotted heading into the solar system from interstellar space, and shock horror, as is often the way with these things, it's decelerating. So it must be a spaceship, right? Well, whatever it is, it soon fucks off again, but it's clearly stopped for a while in Saturn's rings. Was it a refueling stop, a depot of some kind? Might there be alien tech goodies there for the taking? Is the Pope Catholic? Whatever it is, the US of A can't possibly let the Chinese get there first, but they don't have a spaceship handy that can make the voyage. Space Station 3 is minding its own business, being a base for science in high Earth orbit. Let's strap some engines and a cooling system to this bad boy and send it to Saturn. And there's actually a fun section where the authors go to town on some of the modifications needed to do just that, and some assembling of a suitable crew. Ctein, the co-author, is a photographer by trade, I gather, so perhaps it's no surprise that one of the main characters is a devastatingly handsome, wait for it, photographer. And there's more nerdy details about cameras and lenses than I really wanted or needed, unfortunately, in the book. Our handsome photographer is also rich and an ex-special forces operator and a bit of a ladies' man. So Ctein really threw the kitchen sink at it, I think. Projection, maybe. The Chinese do have a mission to Mars, and it's about to get going, or already on its way. I forget which it is. And they make some hurried modifications of their own to change their mission up. And then, as the title suggests, we're in a race to Saturn. The Chinese are the hare of this tale, with 5 enormous thermal nuclear engines strapped to their spaceship, which packs a massive punch, but only for a few hours. And the Americans and their converted space station are the tortoise of the piece, using an ion engine, which puts out a comparatively weedy propulsion force, but constantly. So slow and steady is the order of the day. Both ships experience issues along the way, whether by accident or bodged modifications or sabotage. Who knows? So I quite like the bootstrapping of the spaceships, and that part reminded me of the opening section of Seven Eves, but without the imminent jeopardy of planetary destruction, without the peril, or nothing like as much of it anyway. Having spent the majority of the book getting to Saturn, I think when they actually arrived, it was a bit of a damp squib, and the interaction with the alien tech is a bit simplistic, I thought, a bit of an afterthought. The Chinese team is perhaps a bit generic, a bit paint by numbers, but there is some nice political manoeuvring towards the end, some desperate attempts to either obtain the alien goodies or prevent the other party from keeping it. Like Upgrade, it was fun while it lasted, but unlike Seven Eves, which I've reread a few times, I doubt that I'll be going back to this one. It's actually quite a nice book. It's got colour laminated boards and a nice plastic cover, but it is quite thick, and I having read it, I don't think it deserves to continue to take up that much shelf space. So I think I will move this one on as well. I'm generally being a little bit more harsh with books. If I've read it and I don't think I'm ever likely to read it again, or it just wasn't that good, or it's not a classic of some kind that is worthy just for that fact alone of its shelf space, then I'm jettisoning it from my collection. It was fine, but nothing great. I finished Galapagos yesterday on audiobook, and this was my second Vonnegut. Sirens of Titan being my first, and that was not a happy experience. It was just too absurd for my liking. I just didn't get on with his humour in the book at all. I just found that it was a pointless book, which I gather was sort of his point. If that's not a contradiction in terms, but I just didn't get on with it at all. So that wasn't a great introduction for me to this great of American science fiction and of literature generally, arguably. But prompted by the Broderick and De Filippo list of 101 best science fiction novels, I've ended up with Galapagos on my TBR for May. I do have the physical book, obviously, but I found it was available on Audible too, so I decided to let my ears take the strain and give it a listen. So in Galapagos then, Vonnegut envisages a world going to pot. There isn't enough food, there's too many people, although that's rapidly becoming less of an issue due to a world-spanning infertility virus of some kind. It's the end of the world as we know it, and all because the narrator tells us that our brains are too damn big. In Galapagos, the story is narrated in the story, and not the audiobook. Galapagos is narrated by Leon Trout, who's the son, of course, of Kilgore Trout, who's the author of many terrible science fiction books and a frequent reference in Vonnegut's novels, or so I gather. Leon is a ghost, and he's telling the tale from a million years in the future where Homo sapiens has thrived by ditching the sapient part. Smaller brains and less trouble all round. But how did we get there? And in what I imagine is typical of Vonnegut's style, the answer is in rather absurd fashion. A small group of people are gathered in some Ecuadorian port town, some expecting to go on the heavily advertised nature cruise of the century to the Galapagos Islands. There should also be hordes of rich and famous people going as well, including Jackie Onassis, but events in the wider world have prevented their arrival. We're introduced to a bunch of these characters, and one issue perhaps with listening to this on audiobook is that there was a visual trick in the text that Vonnegut plays. Any character whose death is imminent, who will play no further part in the story, are asterisks whenever their name is mentioned. The narrator does give the game away once or twice, so it's mentioned in passing, so you do get the sense of what he's trying to do, but obviously don't have that visual cue. Anyway, as base clay for the future of humanity, these are it's a rather unimpressive group. There's a pompous but utterly incompetent captain of the ship. He's the only man in the final party, actually. Fortunately for the continuance of humanity, he is also fertile. There's a widow who's only there because her husband went a bit crazy and booked the cruise with their retirement funds and then died. His dying wish that she go on the damn cruise without him. There's a philandering con man, a rich industrialist and his blind daughter, a Japanese inventor and his heavily preggers wife, a flower arranger, and then a local waiter, and eventually a group of 5 or 6 illiterate Kankabono cannibals from the jungle. Vonnegut does some nice, if slightly alarming, predicting in this book. There's a financial crash, there's a pandemic, and published in 1985, pre-internet and pre-smartphone, and where mobile computers were the size and weight of boat anchors. He imagines a box of tricks, Mandarax, which is like a combination of Google and ChatGPT in a handy plastic case with a small screen. Mandarax is the only piece of working technology to make it to the remote Galapagos Island, where our small group eventually fetch up, although more by luck than judgment. The book is mostly them getting to the island, with the final quarter or so telling of their life there, their descendants, and their descent into a more simple, more animal, happier, untroubled, smaller-brained existence. Unlike Sirens of Titan, I did not hate this book. I was happy to have it read to me. It's not a laugh a minute, but there is a wry humour there. Reminded me actually a little bit, not that I've read a huge amount, but reminded me a little bit of Garrison Keillor's Lake Woebegone stories. I think it's probably true to say that I'm far from converted to the Church of Vonnegut, but Galapagos did at least repair some of the damage that he did to me with Sirens of Titan. Tell me, what have you been reading this week? Anything that you particularly recommend? Do let us know in the comments down below. Channel stuff next then. Subscriptions are at 5,774, which if I've done my sums right is up 41 on last week. And if you're one of those 41, or if you've stumbled across my channel for the first time today, then a huge welcome to you. I'm John, and I focus on collecting, reading and waffling on about science fiction books, old and new. Comment of the week this week is from Dark Commission, who, by the way, has very kindly let me use some of his music, his electronica music. So you'll hear it appear at the beginning and sometimes at the end of some of my videos. But anyway, Dark Commission, I think, is more or less on the same page as me, no pun intended, on the book versus virtual media front. Like me, he's not anti the others, but with a strong sense of connection to the real, whether that's in physical book form, pages and whatnot, or even physical audiobooks, good old-fashioned tapes or CDs, and especially from a collecting point of view. He's been at this collecting game for a lot longer than I have, many decades. And as he says, back in the day, that involved a lot of tramping around the place, the expenditure of time and shoe leather, sometimes only occasionally turning up book gold. And the internet has put many of those shops out of business, unfortunately, but it also does make it a lot easier to find the exact book that you want, maybe taking some of the fun, the thrill out of the collecting process, perhaps. Thank you to Dark Commission for taking the time to leave a comment, and to all of you that have done the same thing. I do really appreciate it. Let's take a quick look at what was on the channel this week. On Sunday, I shared some thoughts, and this was the video that Dark Commission commented on the different types of media that there are for books, and which of them count as reading. And the short version, at least from my perspective, is that they all do. Plus there were some musings on which of those formats are collectible. And that video did generate, as I suspected it would, a lot of good discussion in the comments, although it didn't get terribly many views, I must say. On Tuesday, there was May's book haul, the majority of which it felt like was sourced from PS Publishing one way or another. Plus there were some collection fillers, and if I remember rightly, only one book from a charity shop, which is in quite stark contrast to the halls of old, where I would have tens of books in a single visit. And it's really just a reflection of the fact that I've got an awful lot of books now, so I don't often stumble across something I don't already have. And I'm just a bit fussier about condition these days. So if you like a good book haul, then that one I think is definitely worth watching. On the book buying front, it's been quite a restrained week this week in comparison to the last couple. I've bought a grand total of 2 books, neither of which has arrived yet. And then one book that arrived yesterday that I wasn't expecting, which Nikki has plucked from my Amazon wishlist. And that's always a very nice surprise, so thank you. The to-be haul pile then stands at just that one book at the moment. The fact that there's only one is great, of course, from a shelf capacity perspective, but that will rapidly become an acute problem again in the not too distant future, since I know that I have a suitcase full of books on its way to me from the US. Plus, we've got 2 dealer visits in the offing next month. So June's book haul, I think, is going to be a doozy. Let us take a look ahead. And this will be a short section because honestly, I'm struggling a bit for time. And if I'm honest, the motivation to get ahead of the game on the video front, I think we could probably call it a little bit of a slump. I have made a start, however, on the script for a space opera video covering the 2010s. And I do have half an idea to do something about what I'm sure is my rather amateur approach to book collecting. I might do that one this weekend, but beyond that, I can't say honestly what will be coming, but don't worry, I'm sure that I'll be back on it fairly soon. Maybe I just need a little bit of a rest. But what will I be reading in the coming week? In actual book form, I'm about, I don't know, several chapters into Chugger by Ian MacDonald, which I think in the US was published as Evolution Shore, and this is a sort of zonal book. There's a alien zone creeping around after an impact from something from outer space, and I'm just getting to know the characters. So far so good. And then on audiobook, I haven't started listening to it yet, but that'll be tomorrow morning's job. I'm going to get through Raft by Stephen Baxter. It's not a thick book, so I should have finished this, I think, by the time we speak again this time next week. This wasn't on my TBR plan for the month, and I quite often just add an audiobook or 2 just to kind of bulk up the numbers and get ahead of the game. But I've read a bunch of Baxter books, but I've never read any of the Zealey books, so I'm looking forward to this. And I gather this one can be read essentially standalone. It's set in the same universe, but doesn't really fit from a story perspective with the others. And if I finish Chugger before we speak next week, then I'll make a start on Nevernest by David Zindel, which I'm really looking forward to. Lots and lots of people have told me that this is the best thing since sliced bread, and I really should read it. So I'm looking forward to it. I think there are at least 2 books that follow this one, and this one on its own is fairly chunky, but I gather a bit of a classic, so I'm looking forward to it. As always, thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful weekend, and until next time, goodbye for now.